see, sorry, I see all board members. I see all board members are present. Can I get a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
I move approval of tonight's agenda as posted.
I'll second.
Oh.
Did I beat you, Jeff? Sorry.
Did you just second, Reed?
Sure.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the agenda has been approved. Can you guys hear me okay? It's kind of being spotty for me right now.
Very clear.
We can hear you loud and clearly. Yeah.
Okay, you guys can hear me even though it's cutting out. Okay, I'm glad it's not cutting out for you guys. I just wanted to share a little bit before we get to the next agenda item. The Board of Education believes strongly in parent and community participation, and you are encouraged to express your views on matters affecting our schools. The board welcomes you to board meetings and is pleased to listen to your perspectives and experiences of issues that the board is considering. We understand that this time has caused an extraordinary amount of uncertainty and anxiety, which is why we have allowed more than the typically allotted amount of time for public comment. However, per board bylaw, meetings of the governing board are conducted for the purpose of accomplishing district business in accordance with state open meeting laws, the Brown Act. The board shall hold its meetings in public and shall conduct closed sessions during such meetings only as authorized by law. To encourage community involvement in the schools, board meetings shall provide opportunities for questions and comments by members of the public. Sorry, my computer is almost shut down on me just for a second. I'll continue reading the board bylaw. The board shall limit the total time for public comment on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the board president may increase or decrease the time allotted for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. So that I just want to read a little bit from our board bylaws. And then if we do not get to you during the board meeting, you may always share your thoughts, concerns, or suggestions with the board by emailing meetingcomments@sesd.org. And if you have specific reopening questions for staff that are not answered tonight, then you can email COVID-19 concerns@sesd.org. And with that, we will now move on to agenda item 3A, approval of the 2020-2021 back to school plan. Dr. Gallagher.
Thank you. So the intent of this plan is to give staff the authority to proceed along the lines that they have begun working on a reopening plan. It's not intended to be a final document per se. It's iterative, and in keeping with one of our very important priorities or principles, I'm sorry, it will be flexible. We're going to be flexible. So along those lines, I want to share with you, board, I think many of you are aware of this, that we had two meetings on Tuesday. First with staff that was attended by, I don't remember the exact number, but I think a couple hundred of our teachers or more. And then after that, a similar meeting for parents, which was actually attended by 1,000 members on Zoom and close to another 200 on Facebook Live. And that particular, the nice thing about the Facebook Live, which is also an option now, is that once the meeting's over, it's available to the public for viewing in its entirety. And to date, we have over 2,700 views on that particular Facebook posting of our last meeting. And those two meetings were the same presentations in essence that we're presenting tonight to you. They did, however, give us a wonderful opportunity, give staff a wonderful opportunity to hear from the community and to begin work already on improving the plan and, like I said, making iterations to it so that we can continue to meet the needs of our community. There's three areas that stood out for attention from those two meetings. One of them is in the area of independent study. And Dr. Dean, when she gets to that portion of the presentation, you'll notice, if you saw the previous slide, she's added some slides and will add some content to add further clarity about that particular program. And I should say about that program, it's brand new. I mean, we've had the board policy allowing independent study, but this is a new environment. And Dr. Dean and her team have put this together just in the last couple of weeks, which is why the feedback was so important on Tuesday and why we're going to continue to improve it as we move forward. So two things came out of that meeting. One was a need for increased clarity of what the program is. And I don't think we can do too much of that since it's a new program. We need to keep describing and redescribing, and then also input to see how it might be made more flexible. So Dr. Dean will go into more detail about that. A second area that came out as an important area of focus is the Juntos program at San Miguel. And I have to say, I really, really appreciate all the parent feedback that we got. And I feel badly because I think the way we may have come across when the question about Juntos and independent study came out, I think we may have come across dismissively of that. And for that, I apologize. That was not at all the intent. But what I really appreciate is that community is willing and open to talking to us and to sharing their perspectives. And I'm really, really proud of the new principal at San Miguel, Esteban Ibarra, who has already developed a timeline. There will be a parent information night tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. on Juntos, and then they're putting together a task force. And the purpose of that meeting tomorrow and the task force and the timeline is to see what are the interests of the community and to see how we can fit those interests into our programs, whether it's independent study or into the distance learning virtual school program that we have. So as I said, this plan is iterative. We're going to continue to meet the needs of our community, and conditions are going to change down the line as well. The third area that's going to need continued attention is in the area of special education. Dr. Dean is very, very aware of that, as we all are, and that's a little bit more difficult to address in total in a meeting because the nature of special education is individual education plans. And so we just want the community to know we're very, very aware of those concerns, as are all school districts, I think, about how to meet the needs of kids. And so we'll be continuing to address those. The last thing I'll say is, like, it can't be a meeting in the month of July or forward without reiterating our guiding principles, which again, I'll say, have served us so well. I just imagine a box with four corners that are pushing and pulling on each other, but holding itself together. And those are flexibility, as I mentioned earlier, equity. We need to always keep our eye on equity and being concerned about students not being served in this environment. High quality teaching and learning. And I'll say it again, I'm very proud of our staff, our teachers, our classified employees, our principals, our cabinet, everyone who's pulling together with that in mind to maintain the high quality teaching and learning that we're used to in Sunnyvale. And finally, safety is constantly our concern. And Mr. Smiley will talk about that early in the presentation today. So those are our guiding principles. As I said, we've refined this presentation and we welcome your comments and questions as we continue to do so moving forward. So with that, I think we're ready for the presentation.
Good evening. I'm now introducing myself again because I was muted the first time. Just for the audience members' sake, my name is Jeremy Nishihara. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Information Services. I will be kicking off this presentation. And I'm starting off with our staff survey and parent mailer initiatives that's been happening over the past 10 days. I'm going to start up with our staff surveys for August 2020. Board members, if you recall, we surveyed our staff at the end, in the middle of June, kind of as a recap of our initial distance learning experiences back in the spring. But I wanted to really thank our employee associations for working hand in hand with us to develop some customized surveys. We got feedback that the survey we deployed in June was kind of a one-size-fits-all. So we really worked to tailor the surveys to meet the needs of each of our associations as well as our management team. So the certificated staff launched first just so we can get the information out and the clarity around the instructional programs. And we were requesting certificated staff assignment preferences, of course, their workforce readiness, addressing any potential health concerns of themselves or any members of their immediate family that they happen to be residing with. And of course, childcare issues, because that was a new dynamic thrown to us about 2.5 weeks ago when the entire county, for the most part, went virtual school, right? That kind of put a strain on childcare from across the district for all district employees. And then lastly, we were able to ask, as we approach virtual school supports, what additional support certificated staff would need in conjunction with the outstanding PD that the instruction department is putting together for certificated staff. So we sent that out. The last day is tomorrow that we're expecting that information because we need to start placing assignments and identifying work locations. Because until that happens, then we can't get the communication out from the school site. And ultimately, what I think will calm the parents down is hearing from their teacher, this is what to expect on August 19th. So we are gunning for that pretty fast. The classified staff survey was deployed shortly after, I want to say within 72 hours of that other, with the certificated survey. We really broke it down to customize the survey for the 3 types of classification in our classified units. Think about it this way, there's a group of classified staff that support instruction. So we asked questions of those individuals. So think those are like our paraeducators and other support providers in the classroom. The second group is our clerical support. So those are like the school admins and many of the district office staff. We asked them certain types of questions. And then we have a group of our classified staff, like our MOT folks, bus drivers, that it's very difficult to accomplish their work from home. But we do wanted to ask them the same questions about workforce readiness, health concerns, and childcare. That being said, we've, again, been having great conversations with our classified unit, and I really want to acknowledge and appreciate their willingness to explore flexibility in their assignments. We kind of have this mantra that, you know, we're keeping everyone employed this year and everyone working. That's kind of what we're really looking at, and I really appreciate that spirit of togetherness as we move forward. And then lastly, can't forget our management team. Principals reported back 2 days ago, and just making sure that we are taking into account their support and flexibility needs, as well as their workforce readiness, health concerns, and childcare. So I don't have any other details at the moment because all of these surveys are, you know, in mid deployment. Again, the certificated one will close first tomorrow, and we're allowing the Juntos teachers a little bit extra time given the parent meeting that Dr. Gallagher was referring to just to make sure Juntos has the space and time to explore the needs that meet their community. So we'll be putting out additional information once all of those surveys close, but I don't have any other detailed information at the moment. The second part of this outreach initiative we had is the parent mailer project. This what we had an internal code name, Project Contact, and so we were able to get out the 6,450 info mailers. I really wanted to thank actually all departments. We threw together a cross-functional team of folks that were around in order to get this out, because it was quite of a heavy lift to be able to put together coherent information about our instructional program offerings, details about, you know, how to keep their emergency information, emergency contact and email and phone information up to date, as well as providing a logical way for the information to flow back to us. So The mailer project went out with a parent emergency contact update form. So we hope to get back the most up-to-date contact information for our parent community so that we can then keep the entire system updated as we move forward into the school year and even obviously after the school year starts. Back to school options I covered with information on virtual school and independent study. And then importantly, the selection of opting in for the independent study program as well as a computer and internet access request form. We gave this entire packet was sent to every household we had in our system, translated into Spanish. We had a self-addressed envelope as well as an online form for them to return. I can say that we've received 1,174 student information back through the digital form and a box about this big of the blue envelopes that were mailed back hard copy. So, and then in addition, we were able to work with Linda Van Maurik and the preschool program to also include specific information for the preschool program to make sure that they had the information they need to know how to open school. So it's been a pretty crazy 3 weeks. A lot of information is coming back, very timely, and we are trying to utilize all of this information to balance the needs of our parents, our students, and our staff. And I think we're well on our way to have the information that we need to try to meet as many of those interests as we can. So I'm going to hand it over now to our Chief Operations Officer, Rob Smiley, to touch on safety. Take it away, Rob.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. So I know safety has been one of the things besides what is the plan for the students for 2020. Safety is one of the top things on everybody's mind. So we are under the same ordinance that any of the retail or restaurant facilities that you all may be visiting out in the community. And the first and foremost is to maintain 6 feet physical distance from all other persons. And really the thing that we're going to remind our staff of is that that's whenever possible. There are activities such as team lifting, which cannot be done by a single person. But other than that, whether you're in break rooms, common areas, we always kind of view ourselves as family at the school sites because we tend to spend more time there than you even do at home. However, in effort to be protective of everybody's health, that 6 feet distance is something that we're going to continue to stress and hope that everybody can be respectful of as we begin the return to school process or return to the campus process, even though I know everybody's going to be extremely excited to see one another. We'll be posting signage around the school site that's going to be consistent with the county protocol. I'm sure you've noticed as you've been entering facilities around the community lately, we'll have that checkbox that says they're COVID prepared. All of our school sites, we have a protocol in place for each of them that's done through the county health department to signify that our operations are all COVID prepared as well. Hygiene is continuing to reinforce what we finished the year off with. Soap and water is still what is recommended to be the most effective form of reducing the transmission of the virus from person to person on contacts. We will have hand sanitizer dispersed throughout the campus. And then staff is going to be required to wear face coverings when they're entering the campus and when you're moving around the common areas. So if you do make it to a classroom or if you do make it to an office in a private area where you're not sharing space with one another, it is acceptable to lower your face covering in those situations, but really just whenever you move around, to be respectful of the requirement as well as just be respectful of one another. So wellness checks, we are working on some systems to put in place to have staff do a daily self-check for COVID-19 symptoms. We're going to be, I'm sure everybody's very well aware of the symptoms at this point. However, part of our protocol is we are going to be training staff and reaffirming the symptoms that need to be aware of that could be indicating that someone may be positive or have the active COVID-19 virus. So we'll be doing a self-screening. And then as well, we'll be training the staff on their balance of the county guidance. One thing that is not included in the daily screening, and I know there's been a lot of back and forth about this, and before I mention that, actually, I do want to remind you all that what we're following is strictly adhering to both the county health department guidance and the county office of education guidance. In times like this, there's medical professionals that we're going to be relying on, and following their guidance is always going to be the best course of action. So we are not going to be until we are directed to, we're not going to be taking the temperature of staff on a daily basis. However, there will be opportunities. Actually, Jeremy Nishihara, who you just heard from, and Dr. Gallagher, our superintendent, are working with the El Camino Health to set up staff testing if that is an option that people are looking to go forward with. So, next slide, please. Campus access. At the beginning of the year, we're going to be limiting campus access to staff, essential visitors, and students picking up meals. Essential visitors would include somebody who's coming to pick up school supplies for a student. If there is a particular situation that warrants a in-person interaction. And then our food service department is going to be not open in the manner how they finish the year, but open in a manner where students who have ID cards or the parents with their ID card will be able to come pick up meals. The meal system has kind of been changing as waivers have been continuing or initiated throughout this process. However, at this point in time, we're essentially back to status quo as far as food distribution goes for both breakfast and lunch service. Disinfecting, all of our restrooms, door handles, other high-touch areas will be disinfected daily. And to add to that, we've been having a very significant portion of our staff who've been participating in a program that the Department of Pesticide Regulation has put together. It's called the Integrated Pest Management Program for schools and childcare. And what that does is that actually allows us to provide disinfectant spray to those staff members who have completed that course. So if there's areas that in their classroom or in their office space or just what they need to do to really ensure safety of themselves, they have the option to do some disinfecting throughout the day if they so choose. We mentioned about the food services, actually the good part about food service is they're one of the more highly regulated departments in our district and are always under the supervision of the county health department. So they'll be continuing to wear personal protective equipment, and we're going to be continuing to ensure that vendors meet all the guidance that's put out by the CDC, and really just continue these strong cleaning protocols that they had in place, and then reinforce what we already have been doing in the kitchen. For our facilities, we do actually have a couple additional safety measures that we put in place. CDC has issued and County Health Department has issued guidance around air filtration for HVAC systems. And we're going to be installing, or are almost done actually at this point, installing air filtration systems that meet or exceed the recommendations that have been put out by both those agencies. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mala Ahuja, the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, and I'm going to be exploring these two the couple of back-to-school options that we have a little more. These are virtual learning and independent study. At our last board meeting, I touched upon the outline of blended learning, but since that option is currently not an available one for us, we will focus on the two that are. I will walk you through the details of the first, that's virtual learning. And Tasha, our Assistant Superintendent of Special Education and Student Services, who is leading the charge on the independent model, will explain that a little more in depth. Next. Thank you. So virtual school, just broadly, this applies to both the elementary and the middle school setting. It includes live and pre-recorded instruction, as well as independent work. Students and teachers meet online daily in small groups or whole groups. There's regular feedback provided to the students on the work that they're doing. Assessment, grading, and accountability are all part of this model. And these are some of the differences from the spring distance learning, as when we did not have either assessment or grading, there was no attendance taken, and we were not accountable for instructional minutes. That's what's changed broadly. I'm going to go into some key components. Next, please. Some of the key components, like I mentioned, live instruction. That's one I want to talk about a little more, as there are many ways in which this could be interpreted. From the Sunnyvale lens, we're looking at it as a combination of whole group, small group, and independent work. So I want to give you a couple of possible examples because it's going to be very different depending on the developmentally appropriate age of the student that the teacher is serving. So for example, a teacher could give a short mini lesson. It would be different time span for a first grader or a seventh grader. So maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then the class breaks up into small groups. And then the teacher visits at least one or two small groups during that instructional block of time. And the other students are working independently on work that is meaningful and directly connected to the learning outcome of the lesson, which the teacher has covered in the mini lesson that was conducted. I do understand there have been a lot of questions, and I really understand families' concerns about wanting to know what the daily schedule is going to look like with specific times and hours. This is going to happen very, very soon at the site level, but I will share broadly to just give you an idea. We are mimicking a regular school day in terms of the instructional day. So for example, the students come in the morning. There's an opening activity. The teacher is working with the students in probably a live model. And then you have a teaching block 1 for a period of time, followed by recess. You come back for a teaching block 2, followed by lunch, and then a teaching block 3 with a closing activity. So we're broadly looking at that 8:30 to 2:30 approximately school day with these huge chunks of teaching blocks. And this will be both at the elementary and the middle school level. That's broadly, I know, but I wanted to give you some idea of what the day would look like. Asynchronous learning is location-independent learning, and it incorporates a variety of activities. Some examples include pre-recorded lesson, science, art, and PE are some example at the elementary grade spans. Access to online curriculum, for example, TCI for history, social science, and some pre-recorded mini lessons that students can watch on their own, are some examples at the middle school level. Independent work is exactly how it sounds, independent work that's teacher assigned. And this could be a combination of online as well as paper packets, as we want to be super mindful of screen time. We know this virtual learning environment is going to be taxing, for many, and we want to be mindful of not too much of screen time. So we are going to balance both online instruction as well as some paper and pencil packets. Next. And like I alluded to earlier, there's embedded accountability in our model, in the model. So instructional minutes are one of the things we're required to be accountable to the state for. And we're creating schedules that are aligned across the 8 elementary sites and across both the middle school sites. So there's equal access to the instructional minutes. Attendance is taken on a daily basis with follow-up conducted on absences. And then for assessments and grading, we have both formative in-class assessments and summative assessments based on skills and standards that are embedded in the instruction. We definitely are committed to regular communication, so families are involved and aware of the progress the students making and their engagement. And as is our current standard practice, report cards will continue to be sent home on a trimester basis. I do understand this slide is a little hard to read, so I'm going to share some key factors that are involved in here. These are standards, distance learning standards that are set by the state and provide the parameters within which distance learning is occurring. So there's daily live interaction required. However, there is no set requirement from the state for how long this daily live interaction needs to take place. So the guidance that we are using is based on what's best for students. And we tried this, we field tested this during summer school. That was very successful and definitely very well received. And we really are so thankful to our amazing summer school teachers and the leadership team that really helped, curate this and help us with being able to definitely recommend it for the fall. The next is minimum instruction is required. You see in blue, minimum instruction is based on the grade spans. There is a requirement to serve students with special needs. we do need to have a plan to re-engage students that miss more than 3 days a week. We do need to ensure that device access and internet connectivity is available to all. We are required, this is a new addition, we are required to keep weekly engagement records. This states how much synchronous or asynchronous instruction a student has received. We have a new requirement also to submit a learning continuity and attendance plan that provides information to the state, and this is in lieu of the LCAP that has been put on hold for this year. How am I doing with pacing, Aaliyah? Can you check? Okay, great. Just want to make sure. Next slide, please. Okay, likely conditions. So what are we preparing for? So we have to be prepared for conditions to change, and we want to be proactive and ready for these conditions rather than be reactive, because as soon as we find out it's possible to have students on campus, we want to already have a roadmap established. And also, we know that there's a variance option that's possible in all these conditions, because at any point, even though we're talking about all campuses open in conditions 2, 3, and 4, 2 and 3 especially, I just talked about those two, there's a chance that a single classroom or a site could be closed due to a virus outbreak. It's not going to happen in Sunnyvale, but anything is possible. So we've also added a few, next slide please. We've also added in a few phases, because we know there's no clear cut going from, condition 1 to condition 2 or condition 2 to 3. So we've added in a few phases. And I want to point out here, let me go through them first and then I'll point something out. So in phase A, that's where we are, where all instruction is virtual. Teachers are focused on building their classroom community, checking in with small groups, and then there's regular follow-up that's taking place with families of students that are not engaging. In addition to being a mandate, it's also a good practice that we have been following. And then it helps us identify some criteria for our vulnerable populations, so that if it's possible to move into phase B, which is all going to be guided by public safety and health, if we can move into phase B, then there may be a few students that are in identified vulnerable populations who might be able to come to school. I want to be really clear that this is going to be totally dependent on A, the families wanting them to come in, and B, the teachers being ready to have students in person, right? So that has to be, both of them have to be aligned. And it's possible at this time, one-on-one assessments are conducted in classrooms. And slowly, as we move to phase C, if possible and when possible, we can increase the number of students coming in. Prioritizing in-person instruction with the teacher in the classroom for at-risk students. This is really just based on feedback from informal feedback. This is not a survey that was done, in conversations with some administrators and some teachers, the special day classes, maybe the younger students that are really not able to manage on their own or be in control of their self, need to be in person, and really beginning with small groups. I just want to identify really clearly that we're not saying these are the 3 groups. It's going to be very individual, based on the school, based on vulnerable populations. So there could be a few students in different groups. So we're not really saying all students in STC need to come into school, but it's the combination of you're in a special day class and you're part of the vulnerable population, you're not engaging in school, we'd like to have you back. Remembering that our ultimate goal is to have in-person instruction, right? That's what we want to work towards. I do want to add here that the phases can be confusing if we take the situations very literally. There needs to be a great deal of flexibility. And for example, all campuses being open really actually indicates that they're not closed. They can be open in the beginning for staff only. Then they could be open for staff and a few children, and then staff maybe and a few more children. This is a gradual process from staff working in their classroom, teaching virtually with no students on campus, adding a few identified students, and then just moving on based on student needs, staff readiness, family readiness. And there are so many multiple factors at play. It isn't a cut and dry model, and really fully embraces our focus on equity. Next, please. So we want to make sure with everything else we're doing, there's ongoing support provided to everyone. We'll start with students and families. So the food service for students will continue with breakfast and lunch available at all schools. And then the grocery distribution at a few of our schools will continue as it has in the spring. Device checkouts will continue as needed on an as needed basis. With us being in fully the virtual model, we definitely know that's going to be a need. And in addition, like I alluded to, we want to be sure we're also checking out additional materials because not everything is going to be online. And depending on the age of the student and the developmental appropriateness, there will be print material. There's also research that talks about how more difficult print is better accessed when it's in print rather than online. So we want to be mindful of all that as we are checking out materials as well. And then we do have a parent education workshop scheduled for August 11th at 6 o'clock in the evening. A flyer will be going out, messages will be going out, and our focus is going to be on the tech tools. We talked about the fact that we've narrowed down the tech tools that are going to be used across the district, and we want to make sure we support parents with how they're being used. Yes, next, please. Thank you. And our definitely important group of people, our teachers, our staff. So we want to make sure we provide them with the support they need and deserve. And one is an online resource bank that teachers can access. We've also had 2 task forces. There's an elementary and a middle school task force that have been coordinated and led by our 2 wonderful ex-principals, Ms. Almond and Ms. Valentine. And the overarching purpose is to really talk about identifying priority standards, doing some standards mapping, planning for the first few weeks of school, establishing norms for all the tech apps that we're using, just so that there's an aligned and consistent message and access for teachers as we begin this most unusual school year. We also have some professional development, which is really important, built in. Wednesday afternoons have been set aside for a combination of some professional development and teacher collaboration, which is really critical. And we also have a host of after-school workshops that will take place throughout the year, just to help students help teachers from not having to reinvent the wheel, so they can work together and learn along the way through the course of the year. So we know as we're returning to school, there's going to be a whole host of needs, both academic and mental health needs that our students are going to need. And we have to really be mindful of that early learning loss and the academic support and the mental health support that is going to be needed. So early identification will also help us know the learning gaps that may have occurred during school closures, and embedding social and emotional learning is going to be a part of all classroom activities and remote learning. And we also have many synchronous and asynchronous whole class lessons on many topics towards this end that include but are not limited to mindfulness, fostering resiliency during adversity, and also self-advocacy. There's just so much our students and our staff and our families need, and we want to provide that safety net to support as much as we possibly can. Thank you.
Good evening, board and community. Jeremy, I'm going to ask if you can go back one slide before I jump into independent study, please. Again, I'm Dr. Dean. I'm Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, and I want to add just some additional comments that Ms. Ahuja talked about, in particular regarding special education, because I know that has been a concern for many of our families. I just want to let the community know that we have received many of those correspondences and emails and all of that, and we are compiling that information. I also want each of you to also know that the Student Services Special Ed team, in particular, Ms. Chu, who is our Coordinator of Behavioral Services, our Director of Special Ed, Ms. Van Brouwer, and Ms. Kanunga, who is our Coordinator of Special Education. So they've been working on rubrics and data-driven to really do the things that Ms. Ahuja has talked about and what we want to do in our classrooms, but looking at that as it relates to FAPE and other special needs, things that we're going to have to consider. So what you can look for is additional correspondence coming, but we wanted to let this big packet come with the details that are coming so that families wouldn't be inundated all at one time with everything. So you will complete that phase of data, and then you will continue to get some additional information that's more specific to you as a parent or a family member of a child with special needs. So we just wanted you to know we have not forgotten that, but we know it's a lot and there's a lot to navigate for those populations. And so that additional information will be coming, but it will be coming more targeted through your psychologist, your site principal, and your case managers with the support of the student services team. So I just wanted to add that additional information so the community members would know that will be some of the next phases that are coming. With that, Jeremy, you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So in addition, there's been a lot of feedback, and I've found this time particularly enlightening and somewhat invigorating because of all the questions that have been coming. And really, we talk about providing this input to our students, that to ask questions leads to hopefully the best answer or better understanding. So I think the questions that we've been presented with are doing the same for us. So some of this information is consistent with what we've communicated, but I want to reiterate what are some critical aspects of independent study. And the detail related to that, independent study can be a lot of different things. But what we are offering is aligned with our board policies. And so we have to fall within that. Some of the other options, and one in particular I want to speak to here, is about homeschooling. Homeschooling falls in the alternative area of education, but it is not independent study, and it does require additional authorizations and clearances to offer that as a program within your district. Here in Sunnyvale at this time, it is not an option for us because we do not have the clearances that go with such types of programs. So just wanted to kind of lay that foundation as we're listening to the information about the program that we do have and what the details associated with that program include. So some of the critical questions as we look to our independent study program is looking to, you have to ask these particular questions because their intent is that it is a program while a teacher will be assigned and will be providing support to the parent and our student, depending on the developmental age of the student and things of that nature. These are still critical questions that we must ask because they're critical and they impact the capacity of the student to be able to be successful in such a program. So those questions are listed there, so I'm not going to go into great detail on those, but it is important to understand that they are questions as a parent that we want you to be cognizant of and be able to ask yourself and ask your student. And so once you do that and your answer is no to any of these, it doesn't mean that if there's a no, it's not possible for the independent study, but it does mean a more critical, maybe more deep conversation needs to happen. So you can be sure that this is a program that at least going into it, you and your student might feel as positive as possible it's the right program for you. Next slide. Some other factors that go along with independent study, and some of this requirement again comes from policy in the state. But with this, there's a master agreement. The purpose of the master agreement is one, it's a commitment. It's basically like a learning contract, if you want to look at that. It's really trying to make the student an owner of their learning and a significant partner in this work. Our philosophy and philosophy of good teaching is we want parents to also be a part of this work. But in particular in independent study, it's critical. for the success of the program. One of the other requirements is there's a minimum of 1 hour a week. Now that 1 hour a week may not be all at one time. That 1 hour a week may meet 2 30-minute time segments. It will be left to the teacher who's assigned to a student and the parent to kind of devise and come up with a plan that works best for the learning plan for a particular student or students. In addition to that, the attendance is still taken, as Mala talked about, but attendance is tied to work production, because a part of getting clearance through the state for attendance, we have to produce and show that the work has actually been completed. And so that's why that portion is so important. So whether it's work completed for homework, whether it's a project that had to be completed, you have to have a sense of how much time might be devoted to complete that project. So it's really almost like a time analysis of work in general. Now, some people, of course, will be much faster. Some may take much longer, but it's an average. And that's where the consultation weekly comes in, so that the work production is aligned to who the student is and what his or her needs might be. In addition to that, the teacher will be available for just like office hours, just things come up, questions that may happen. This may take place in the form of email, an app. It may take the form of emails, text messages. It's really just going to depend on what works best for the team that's working together. And then because of the complexity of this program and of course the unknowns of with what will be happening in our county and things of that, we are looking for a trimester commitment for this. And from an equity standpoint, equity for the teaching teams, but also equity of the students and their learning and what it will take for them to be successful. So these are just some of the additional things to think about for independent study that will be there. And I wanted to clarify a little bit more. Next slide. There have also been quite a few questions with regards to the Acellus program. And so I want to just kind of, before I talk about the program specifically in a little bit more detail, I just want to talk about why this component is important and some details that we've thought about in integrating this into the programming. So there will be some level of work online, and I know that brings a bit of anxiety maybe to some parents and even some students. But it is a balance, and it is in keeping with some of the standards that we are working to provide our students and understanding and skills that they're going to have as well as it works, as it relates to being online. So there will be a balance, but there is work online, and the amount of online work will be comparable to the developmental and appropriateness of that for the student and their age. Teacher will provide assignments. Assignments may be some things online. Assignments may be pencil and paper. Assignments may be reading material. Assignments may be a project. It will just really depend. The other distinction here with the independent study and looking at the program, though, is that there's a little bit more limited interaction between the teacher and the student on a weekly or daily basis. And so that is a very significant distinction between the programming that Ms. Hvac talked about earlier with regards to our virtual learning. That is significant. And the reason for that is twofold. It's this program, independent study, is being offered to offer flexibility to families where meeting with a teacher at 2 o'clock every day is just not going to work for dual employed families and other unique circumstances that families must deal with. So this will offer them the flexibility to get some of that learning digitally online through online instruction, but at a time and date that's convenient for them to get that work done. So as we talk a little bit more about the Acellus program, it is a program that is designed, it can be a full program, you just stay in it the whole time if that's what you wanted to do. It has the capacity to do that. The one exception to that would be physical education. That would be district design work that is not embedded within the program. In addition to that, for this program, it does offer the opportunity to provide remediation if a student needed some of that. That is not the purpose of the program, but there are some built-in components that would allow for that. It does allow, of course, for grade level instruction. And what's important here is that instruction is aligned to our standards and the state expectations of what we need to do. And it does allow for some level of acceleration for students who want to explore other things and do other things and have the capacity to do that as well. The program, what's unique about it that will be particularly helpful, especially as we have teachers who are maybe new to independent study and kind of juggling multiple lessons and subject matter, is that there are some pre-built lessons within the program that will be able to support our course work that we're doing based upon district curriculum as well. So it'll be kind of a blended model when you look at that, incorporating the work that we typically do, but also incorporating the components of this program that students will have the capacity to be informed about. So it's very helpful that way. Our intent for adding this was not to give students a computer and say, go for it and have a good time. That's not the focus. It is integrated, it is guided, and that's why we have a teacher assigned to this work to help provide that guided learning that students need. Next slide. To kind of reemphasize this a little bit, I couldn't think of any other way to do this except to show a schedule. So I decided to go ahead and add this to the presentation this evening so that the team here could begin to see, and families, that this is what a day will look like. Now, you will see on this schedule that there's other things that are incorporated. Is it learning? Absolutely. This is a developmentally appropriate TK Kinder type of schedule, right? There's other things that they can learn and can be incorporated into their learning as a part of things that are in their household, their community, etc. But to the right, you will see, as Mala outlined, we have some responsibilities with regards to how much instruction is provided throughout the day. And so those instructional minutes are still the same as was explained earlier in the presentation, but how that is developed. Now I'm showing here, this would be kind of a daily with the mindset of a Monday through Friday type of concept. But the actuality is it could happen Saturday, Sunday, it could happen at night, it can happen when it's best for the student and the family. So just wanted to kind of give a visual. And then, so for upper grade, if you can change to the next slide, this would be a middle school example of what the day might look like. Again, you'll see I've added check-in and day. These are middle school students, so it would be developmentally appropriate for them to log in and see what their daily schedule is going to be for the day. What are the concepts that are going to be learned? What am I going to be concentrating on? They can pick and choose. I've just kind of set up some concepts here. I color coded to give a perspective, because that color code could be, for example, just to give an idea of the flexibility that could be here, is that maybe the teacher has decided that there's a few students at a particular time, for example, that at some point may need to join forces together, right? So that they can see that. So they may be able to connect them and do things of that nature if it works out. So there is some flexibility, but everything is tied to who the students are and what their particular circumstances might be. So with that, that just kind of gives a little bit more context to what a day might look like. We definitely want it to be a balanced program for our students. And basically just kind of, we want the learning to be from what the teacher feels is important to get the standards, but also we want the students to kind of inform and be a significant part in their learning as well. So with that, that will kind of surmise, if you will, a little bit the program with regards to independent study program and some of the uniqueness and the considerations that have to be made with designing that type program learning. So with that, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about socio-emotional learning in here. Mr. Hujat talked about how we're embedding that work into our daily instruction to provide students and our staff with the supports that they need. Some reminders I want to provide here, because I know this is a concern as well, is our goal as a district is to continue providing the social emotional supports that we've been providing. For example, our work with Hvac. Hvac is preparing to do teletherapy, and we're also preparing to see how we can potentially provide face-to-face in therapy services where possible for students who really need that. So those are processes that we're looking at to be sure that students get the supports that they need. In addition to that, our social workers are working to do similar things. You know, what is the best way to deliver what students need, their therapy, their counseling, group instruction, how are we able to do that? We will be looking at those particular components to provide those services as students need them. And so as we kind of close here, just kind of wrapping things up for our team and some of the work that we've been doing, we just want to close by saying here that we want to give ourselves grace. We want the parents to give themselves grace, and we want to give ourselves grace. I think we all need a little bit of that sprinkling from time to time, day to day. It is very difficult work, as we all know, but we are working as a team, and we want to continue to practice the skills that we teach our students, which is to be resilient. We want to be present. We want to build connections. We want to focus on what's most important. And of course, that's the education, the safety, and the well-being of our students. And so we're going to continue doing that. We're going to continue listening, and we're going to continue fostering connections so that we can move forward together and be stronger together. And so with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Gallagher.
Thank you, team, and thank you, Tasha. That was a great summary. Board, Ms. Maginot, we're open to any questions or comments that you have.
So I think we're actually, now's the time for public comment on the back to school plan. And then after that, we'd make a motion and board would discuss. So if there's any members of the public who would like to speak to the board, please use the raise hand feature now. Reminder, it's usually on the bottom. Sometimes it's on the top right. And it's usually by your name, or there's a little raise hand feature. We'll wait just a minute to see how many people we have before we proceed. We'll give it maybe another 10 more seconds. If anyone else would like to speak on the back to school plan, please use the raise hand feature. And for those who are on the phone, can someone, I don't remember, they do star what if they're on the phone and want to raise their hand? Is it star 9? All right, we had 8 raised hands. It just went down to 7. Wait 1 minute in case someone accidentally took their hand down. All right, so we will, just so you know the order, and it is star 9, someone just let me know. So there's someone star 9. So, okay, we do have 8 now. So I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong, but the order we have is Lupe, Katie, JP, Maite, or I don't know how to pronounce it for sure, I apologize. Chandru, Sarah, Carlos. My thing is not scrolling farther down, but I think there should be one more, right, Aaliyah?
Justine.
Thank you. I don't know why mine's not scrolling down. Okay, so we will take those 8. Board, if the board consents, I would say let's keep it at our regular 3 minutes, and so we'll go just a little bit over our 20 minutes. If board is okay with that. Does that work, board?
Yeah.
Thumbs up? That works? Okay, so we will do those 8 with 3 minutes each. And those who are speaking, Aaliyah will facilitate it, and there will be a timer, and we'll let you know when your time is up to be able to wrap up your comment. So I will turn it over to Aaliyah to lead us through public comment.
Yes, and Jesus has the timer too, so I'll do a 15-second warning. Thank you very much. First up is Katie, and next up is Lupe.
Good evening. My name is Katie Rowland, a proud parent in the Juntos program at San Miguel. I was also the primary author for a letter submitted yesterday to the Board of Education and Sunnyvale School District Cabinet. Thank you, first of all, for the efforts I've been seeing since we submitted this. As the letter writer and on behalf of the 42 people who signed the petition, that's 29 Juntos parents, 7 San Miguel teachers, and 6 other parents in the Sunnyvale School District, I would like to go ahead and share that with everyone to ensure this is recorded as public comment. As per the 728 informational session, the Sunnyvale School District has chosen to deny the opportunity for Juntos students to undertake independent study for the 2020-2021 school year. We, the undersigned, ask you to reconsider this decision in light of the following. Whereas Sunnyvale School District, in recognition of the many benefits of dual immersion for all students, and especially for vulnerable learners, launched the Spanish-English dual immersion program Juntos. Whereas Juntos is a vibrant community within the San Miguel community, a significant percentage of whom are socioeconomically disadvantaged and or English language learners. Whereas many Juntos families are capable of providing instruction in both English and Spanish. Whereas many families have multiple children or work during the day and will struggle to support Juntos students in the synchronous learning required in the district's virtual learning program. Whereas, despite equity being touted as one of the guiding principles of the reopening plan, the district has decided to offer an independent study to all other students except for the specific population, excluding some of our most vulnerable learners from accessing asynchronous learning due to their participation in a district flagship program. Whereas the district selected a third party to administer its independent study program, one that is not available in Spanish, in spite of the fact that this selection would necessarily discriminate against the Juntos population and some of the district's most vulnerable students. Whereas the district failed to inform Juntos families of this decision until a parent asked at the 728 meeting less than a week before families must select which option is better for them. We therefore respectfully request that you provide an independent study option that will meet the needs of the Juntos program students and the many historically marginalized and vulnerable learners within that program. It is unconscionable to do otherwise.
30 seconds left.
Thank you. We further ask that you extend the August 3rd deadline for selecting the at-home learning option for Juntos parents. Thank you. And I'll just say, I know you've taken some of those actions, but I felt it was important to represent the views as they were expressed at the time. Thank you again.
Thank you, Katie. I meant to remind everyone to just try to keep a slow pace. That was a great pace, Katie, so I appreciate it. Next up is Lupe, and then JP Arpino.
Hello, this is Lupe Escareno. I am a parent of my son, Hector Escareno Jr. He is currently going to be a 3rd grader in San Miguel School. I also side with Katie on the whole independent study. I think it should have the Juntos component. I myself am bilingual, so I'm more than able to assist my son in any independent study or virtual learning that can go into his learning, capabilities. Again, I do really want to emphasize on the daycare component because I know other schools like Vargas, Bishop, and other, even Cherry Chase do have a CDC daycare on site. And I know San Miguel does not have that. They have California Young World, but they don't have another choice for us working families. So I know with this virtual learning going on, I do again want to really emphasize if there can be some type of, you know, on-site daycare for, you know, not just for us parents, and it can also be for teachers as well, to have that for the 6 weeks that they have to do this independent learning. Because otherwise I would have to, you know, really rely on Vargas to do the daycare for my son as they are now. So again, I really want to emphasize on the daycare component for us working families. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lupe. Next up is JP, and then after that is Mites Malfitano.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm JP. I'm a parent of an incoming first grader in the San Miguel program as well. I would just like to recognize what Katie said, that it was very disappointing to hear on the last call that there wasn't an independent study option plan for the Juntos program. I would also like to recognize that there is now planned information session for the Juntos program tomorrow, but I do have some real concerns with the timeline that's laid out for decision making. We are being asked to make a decision between virtual and independent study learning next week. In certain cases, I believe for us, it's next Wednesday. But what I have yet to see is a sample teaching plan of what a day in the life for my son would be, to better understand what it would look like. I see that there's some rough plans, and there's ideas of, you know, 3 hours and 50 minutes of online time, and that can be broken up in a bunch of different ways. But what I'm actually looking for are very specific examples that the schools can provide that actually give a sense of what it would be like for my son and his curriculum in both options, for us to be able to better make a decision. Without that, I don't feel as though we are informed to be able to make a choice. The options that are given to us are too broad currently. And so I would ask to be able to see, for both the schools to be able to develop teaching plans for our students, and for us parents to be able to see examples of that, and for us to be able to have the time to then make the decision that's best for our students. Thanks.
Thank you very much, JP. Next up is Maite, and then Chandru is after.
Voy a hablar en español, ¿me escuchan? I will speak in Spanish. Can you hear me?
Yes, and just a reminder for folks to hear the translation, if you go to the global icon and click on English, you can hear the English translation of the Spanish speaker.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. I'm a mother of Juntos program. And I want to thank all of you for taking in consideration our community. And I also felt disappointed when I heard about the independent studies about that program, because I understand that there are families that are not going to be able to support their children with their studies. And I still do not understand how the program works, the independent studies program. I don't know how it's going to work. For instance, if children are going to be able to see other children, get together with them, with other students. And I want to request more flexibility to be able to switch from one program to another if we feel that our children are not doing really well in one program. And also in regards of the program during the year, if they're going to be just like stable in one program, if they're just going to be in one program the whole year. We would like more details. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Next up is Chandru and then Carlos.
Right. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, so I'm Chandru Vittalbaba. I'm a speech pathologist at Vargas Elementary. I wrote this letter to Dr. Cody talking about basically a request saying that schools should remain on distant learning until there was 14 days with no cases. I had, as of this writing, over 1,800 signatures to that open letter, including the developer of the COVID assay. And I just want to first of all say it's very commendable that the district has been listening to the voices of teachers and parents in the district and realizing that there are significant safety concerns with a physical reopening right now. As I understand, that decision was made even before Governor Newsom made a decision, which is a very commendable one. My question about I do like that there's very clearly demarcated phases. What is not clear is when, on what metrics, the phases will be changing to. So for example, if there is going to be a physical reopening of schools, even for a limited population, when will that happen? I would really like to know, and I think the public has a right to know, the exact metrics, because I know that we are a very science-based district, and we are definitely going to be working on data-driven policies as to when we're going to physically reopen, as opposed to more capricious whims of elected officials, as we are sadly seeing in a lot of the political stages. However, I have not been hearing when that's going to happen. For example, Fremont Unified, I believe, has actually said we will be on virtual learning until Alameda County has 14 days with no cases. Is that an option that we can have? Another option that I was wondering about is if there's any flexibility on when reopening, when the schools, God forbid, might have to close again. I know Governor Newsom said that if 5% of a school has cases, the school will have to reclose. I know that that would mean that'd be 35 students at Vargas, a full class, which I feel like would be an incalculable loss to our community. I do also want to say too, I think it is great that we have a testing provided. I noticed that, I know Dr. Gallagher is a big Earthquakes fan. The Major League Soccer is testing all their players and staff every 2 days. Is that, I know that we're not a soccer franchise. I know teachers have been always underfunded, not in Sunnyvale. Is that in all a possibility?
30 seconds left.
The last thing I wanted to say was that I do appreciate, it's been great seeing Dr. Gallagher, the school board members, in a more normal year, they would be coming to the school and observing us, helping serve. Is that something that would be happening? Would they be making physical visits at a school when a school physically reopens? I think that would really show the confidence in the reopening plans if they were actually going to be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chandru. Next up is Carlos and then Justine.
Hi, I just want to kill my time. My questions were already answered. Well, the comment I had in mind, somebody already raised it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Next up is Justine and then Selena Y.
Hi, this is actually Heather Osborning. Sorry, I couldn't change my name. My daughter was using my phone earlier tonight. So I actually spoke on Tuesday as well, but I just wanted to reiterate my comment that I really hope that the school board and the school district can help pave the way to allow volunteers to be on the Zoom calls, working in small groups with the kids. When you guys mentioned the possible schedule where there would be instruction from the teacher for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then the kids would go into small groups, I thought that would be a perfect time to have parent volunteers working in those small groups. So I think it would be great if there's a way that the district can open up the path to let that happen. I know there are a lot of privacy issues, but I think people really want to help, and this is a great way for them to help. So I hope that that can happen soon. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Selena Y and then Susan Cabella.
Hi, I had a couple questions for Tasha for the independent study. I was wondering, one, if the independent study teacher will be a teacher at the school that our children are at, or if you are envisioning this across schools in the district and kind of lumping students who choose it with teachers that are not necessarily at their school. And the other question I had was for the meetings with the teacher and the student. Are those expected to be one-on-one meetings, or are these group meetings with the other students in that teacher's group?
For the first question, with regards to school sites, where possible, we're trying to keep the teachers with students at a site where they are. But because we don't know how many students at this time will be on independent study, and also the alignment of who those students are with the teachers who have an interest in being an independent study teacher, we will not be able to guarantee that they will be at a site, which is their home school. But every effort will be made to have that alignment when and where possible. With regards to the meetings, once we finalize who will be the independent study teachers, we will have a meeting and orientation for that. And then how we proceed next will be a joint effort to coordinate pre and post meetings, both with students and with parents as appropriate.
Next up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
I think we're at the end of our public comment. Yes? Or did you say next up? Was there one more?
There's one more.
Sorry, it's kind of cutting out for me.
There's one more left. Sorry.
One more. Okay. Thank you.
Susan Capiel, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm a teacher at San Miguel, and we received our survey options a couple weeks ago. Or, on July 21st, I sent a list of 10 questions so I can have a more clear understanding of the teacher responsibility for independent study, since it is so new. And after Tuesday's meetings, I had 5 more questions. I still have not received any answers satisfactorily enough for me to fill out the teacher survey. So here's my list. 1, can we get a clear list of the job description for independent study? 2, what exactly are teachers supposed to prepare for students? A template plan would be helpful. 3, how frequently does a teacher provide curriculum directions to students? Weekly, monthly? 4, what materials are used for every subject area? Reading, phonics, language, grammar, math, PE, science, social studies, and the arts. 5, who is responsible for gathering the materials and making copies? 6, what are the protocols for materials distribution? 7, will independent study teachers receive training because it's a brand new position for them? 8, what are the expectations for meeting with students? Do we collect work? 9, what documentation is necessary for auditing student completion of assignments and meeting standards? 10, does student work need to be graded? How much of it? How frequently? With what rubric? And are report cards required for every student? 11, anyway, will ASYLIS be the main curriculum used for independent study, or will we need to supplement with other curricular resources? What documentation is necessary for auditing student completion of assignments and meeting standards? I lost track. 12, if we use ASYLIS, is that the platform where student work will be submitted? 13, what is the timeline for teacher assignments for independent study? Will training be scheduled? Will it conflict with the current district professional development weeks? 14, your sample schedule for elementary independent study showed only 16 students, not 24, which
30
would
seconds.
be my grade level. If we had a maximum of 24 students, would meetings be held less frequently? Or will shorter meetings be acceptable? 15, who will be the coach for independent study teachers? I would appreciate answers before the deadline of tomorrow's 4 o'clock time for the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for all those who shared comments. We are now closing public comment. So if public has other thoughts that come to them or questions that aren't answered, again, reminder, you can send comments to the board at the meeting comments email. I'm blanking on the name, I don't have it up in front of me, meeting comments at SCSD, I believe, and then questions can go to the COVID-19. We will open it up to board. So board, I can start with you guys if you want. I also kind of had a list of questions as people were talking. So unless someone wants to go first, I might kind of go through those and then open it up to you guys. What do you think?
Yeah, that's fine, Michelle, because a lot was brought up, so that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. And then you guys, if there's others that you want to follow up from, and then just our own questions or comments. Okay, just for that, the last one we'll start with first. Staff, who would be the best person in the district staff for that teacher to email that list of questions to get answers?
So I'll jump in, and I'm thinking Tasha and I have been in conversations about the teacher meeting would be the next piece of this, as a lot of the information on independent study is coming forth. So I think the guiding questions is super helpful to add to the other dozens that we are fielding to kind of put all that information together. So my recommendation would be I'll include Susan's information just to attend that independent study teaching. And we plan to hold that next week. Tasha, I'm kind of looking at you right now. Like, I know we're spinning this up pretty fast because I think if it sounds like Susan has some interest in it, and again, there's no harm in attending that informational meeting, because then the default assignment, if it's not independent study, would be virtual learning from either at the school site or home. So that would be my recommendation, to get all the information into one place and actually get all of the great questions that Susan asked, plus the others that we fielded together, and present that to all teachers who are interested in this assignment to then move forward and together. So that would be my recommendation.
Great, thank you. And then I know that we have been working on some childcare. I mean, we probably can't get as much childcare for everyone that we would like, but I'm wondering if we have an update on where we are at with childcare, or if there's not updates at this point yet.
No, we're making progress on 2 fronts, and I'll let Jeremy talk about a part of it, the partnership with the city, and then Rob has some updates regarding some potential progress with CDI. So Jeremy, you want to go first?
Yes, so we are engaging in, I want to say, weekly conversations now with the city of Sunnyvale in a partnership to provide childcare for school-aged children through the city. We are relying on the city's expertise in the camps that they were running. In addition to, they have some locations that we could host the childcare for school-aged children. So we're getting pretty close. I don't want to jinx it because there's a lot of moving parts and details, but it is a pretty exciting partnership to be able to engage with those conversations. And it's basically the city providing the guidance and their expertise, facilities, and some staff. It is us working with our classified union to identify classified staff to field that as well. And then once we have those details in place, we can then ask the 80 plus folks that have responded on the survey so far that childcare is an issue, to offer them that option. So we are many balls in the air, but again, it's getting pretty close, and I think we will have final details early next week. And then please look for, there would be an MOU coming forth to clearly outline those details. So pretty exciting partnership and pretty exciting opportunity. We are focusing on that aspect for staff because in conversations with Rob and our on-site, and I'll let Rob kind of discussed this as well, but since the child care providers on site were for our students and our community, we're trying to create more capacity. So again, the city partnership is for employees, and then if we can try to leave the capacity at our school sites for our community to take advantage as well, is about as close to a win-win as we can get. But Rob, go ahead if you want to jump in on those.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy. So I've been in close communication with our child care providers. I've had meetings with both CDI and YMCA at this point. YMCA, they operate out of the Lakewood campus, and they're working on building their interest list. One of the challenges that all of our child care providers face in this current situation is that their staffing costs, they do drop a little bit because you have less staff in a room. However, in that room, well, I shouldn't say staffing costs actually drop, because they end up going up on a per student basis because you have less staff or less children in a room to offset the cost of the staff. They're running about 12 students per room, which is consistent with the guidance. So they have some challenges there on expanding beyond. However, we're looking at some ways to mitigate some of the costs in a little bit different way than the providing of staff, as Jeremy was mentioning. And at Cumberland right now, they're looking like their current rooms should meet the need of the community. Cherry Chase, they may be exceeding the capacity of the rooms they have by one room. So we'll be exploring some options to see if in the virtual school scenario, there is an opportunity to provide a little bit of additional space. Vargas, they may be in need of some additional space as well to serve community students. And then it's sounding like at Bishop, there is a waiting list, which would possibly require an additional room if everything came to fruition. So they have lower enrollment at a few of their other districts. So they do have staff available to shift to Sunnyvale if there is a significant need from the community. So, as Jeremy was explaining it, we kind of have a two-track approach that we're working on. And then, I know there's limitations on both ends, but if we did exceed the need for staff childcare through the option that Jeremy's working on, the CDI group has also mentioned that they would be willing to try to tackle some more of that. So I think everybody's running down the road as quickly as we can to capture the needs and just hoping to gain a better understanding of what people actually need to either get back to work or to support the learning for their kids.
Thank you, Rob and Jeremy. There was a few kind of related to independent study. So one was the question about, well, if a student is doing independent study, will they have opportunities for interaction with other students? That was that specifically, and I think also another question was then asked, like those meetings with the teachers, is it just with the teacher or with other students? Another one is for the independent study teachers, is it going to be site by site, like homeschool, like not homeschooling, but like at your home site, or is it more a district-wide? And then the third one about independent study, actually those are the two that are main independent study, the other two are more general. So I'll start with those two for staff. So it's the interaction with other students, and then who are the teachers? Is it at a site? Is it district level?
I'll take the group and small group instruction piece. That would only be feasible if in fact it worked for who the students and families are, because the planning is around what works best for the students, which is the purpose of the program. So if within that, a teacher could see where there may be possibilities to integrate or support that, then they could work with parents to facilitate that happening. But as a automatic standard, is that going to be a part? I would say we can't say that at this time because we don't know who the students are going to be. And I think Jeremy will have some comments regarding the other pieces.
Yes, and I guess the staff component, and we've engaged in conversations with SCA regarding this as well. I think our interest is to make sure, not knowing the number of students that would be opting for this, and then it would be a calculation on the number of staff members, but then the student load, we would prioritize over, I guess, location, if that makes any sense. We would prioritize tighter grade bands that the teacher is supporting. So we wouldn't want like a teacher supporting, this is an extreme example, but a couple of TK students and a few middle schoolers, right? Like we would try to keep maybe a primary band, upper grade band, and middle school. And so that's kind of our planning. how we're moving forward with the planning, and then seeing how the number of students come in, and then the teachers who will be instructing those students. So again, I guess students would be coming from across the district and not necessarily the teacher from that particular school. So.
Thank you, Tasha and Jeremy. Another one was someone had just asked, so I think we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but maybe share again. We're saying trimester, but then will there be some flexibility in changing education plans if something is not working for a student?
So for the independent study, like I said, it is the trimester. There's two significant factors that we're going to look at. One, is it working for the student? So is the student able to be successful or not? If after, a few weeks, the teacher, parent, sees that, then that's somewhere we have to come back to the table and say, this program may not be what's functional and best for this child. Let's talk about going back to the virtual learning and see what components can be put in place to do that. So that would be a conversation to look at what's working or not working and decide what the next steps will be. And then, of course, the feasibility of integrating, depending on when that need arises. We have to be sensitive to the programs that are in place, giving time to incorporate new students into programming at the right time. So it's functional for the teacher where we're integrating, but it's also functional for the student, and they don't feel like an outsider. They feel like they're going to be integrated into the program, into that learning community.
Thank you. The next question was kind of about specific outlines of what the day might look like. The person was asking, so like they can't make the decision without more specific outlines. And I know that's kind of tricky because of school sites and different teachers, but is there anything that staff can add about, is it possible to get more of an outline than what we have, or is what we described probably what we have at this point?
Michelle, can you clarify? Outline for student or outline for teacher?
For students, like for parents to make the decision, right? Some parents I think are wanting more specific examples of what the day would look like broken down to better understand whether independent study or distance learning is a good fit for them.
I think there was a part where they, there is appreciated the schedule, like a recommended schedule. That's always appreciated, but I think the parent was looking for a little more in depth, like what does the lesson plan look like? So maybe some sampling of what does a day in the life of the online program might look like. What are the lessons, like a little deeper dive into the lessons.
And like different grades are different. Bridget, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, like I think that, Tasha, I really appreciate what you put together for just showing us. I think the only way to show us a sample schedule is to make a sample schedule. So I appreciate that there was one for like TK Kinder, and there was one for middle school. And maybe we just need to sort of see one for elementary school, like somewhere in the middle, because they're pretty different. But in general, I have a clearer idea of what you meant because you put that schedule together. And then Mala, you walk through some scenarios, but I think like, maybe we could we share some things that were done in summer school that were already kind of in this, this virtual world that we've been trying out? Is it possible to post that somewhere online? And I understand that there's always that resistance, like, oh, if we post this, then people think that's exactly what they're getting. But people really are trying to visualize what it means for their day. And actually, I think the person who was speaking, JP, he mentioned 3 hours and 50 minutes for his first grader of online instruction, and that's not necessarily what it says. It was saying 3 hours and 50 minutes of daily instruction, which could be broken up between online live instruction and then other tasks that the teacher is assigning through the day. So this idea that school goes from 8 to 2:30, that might be your window, but some of that your child is maybe reading a book or working in their workbook or on, doing something independently. Maybe they're going on a scavenger hunt around their house looking for arrays, or, you know, I mean, it depends on what the teacher is assigning. So, but I think it's really hard for someone who doesn't have older kids, right? Who hasn't been through the system and doesn't have an idea of what the flow is anyway for a first grade classroom, to say, well, what does first grade mean online? Like, what did they do over the summer, first grade online?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you know, we're more than happy to share schedules because we have created samples. I think, Bridget, you really get the, you know, nuance so well, having been in the classroom yourself. We want to make sure teachers don't feel that that's what we are making sure everyone does. We are not a cookie cutter district. We want to be sure we give them parameters, right? So we just don't want to set anyone else up to not feel successful, because our teachers are doing an amazing job and we want to allow them that creativity. So if we're saying from 9 to, you know, whatever, 8:30 to 11 o'clock, you're going to do live instruction. If they have a 15-minute mini lesson, they have a 20-minute closing, opening circle, or a half an hour, it is going to be very teacher dependent. So we're happy to share samples, but knowing really clearly that it could look different within that time block, because what we are setting parameters around is the instructional minutes. So we have to have so many minutes of instruction. A kindergartner is not going to be able to have a mini lesson for 15 minutes. That's way too long. It's going to be more like 7 or 8 minutes, maybe 5 in the beginning, and then build up. So it is going to vary so much. So yes, I do agree that seeing something on paper, you know, on the screen looks really pretty.
But I mean, also like
something, but
yeah,
it's not going to follow that exactly. To do science learning, you know, literacy and math later, asynchronous, synchronous learning. I mean, they're also, you know, within the model, and it's going to be very site dependent as well. So we are going to work with our principals, you know, between tomorrow and Tuesday when we meet as a group, to come up with their own schedules to share.
So perhaps what we can do is, I understand the idea. If we publish a schedule, people think, oh, that's the schedule. But if we said, oh, it could be one of these three things or something different, then it would be communicating to the community that it's not any one set thing.
Because people don't know what time value means. Like, you know, it's a state required mandate that there's this many instructional minutes or time value. And it's really hard for people, I think, to visualize, like, what is time value? Like, what are you talking about? And, you know, yeah.
So yeah, I think if we just published a couple of different possibilities, then people will see like, oh, it might be one of these or none of them, but this is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think
sample ideas.
Okay. Yeah, I like prefacing it like that. Yeah, I think people just want to be able to make an educated decision based off of what they know of their child and how they work best. So I think samples with that you know, just clarifying it like that and just making sure that they understand that this is just some possibilities. But I think it gives them a sense of what their day and their lessons will look like. I think that's what they're looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, I could show you one right now, but I don't think this is the right time. We definitely will. Just want everyone to know that it's not that we don't have the samples. It's really not trying to not be tied down, but giving a variety, maybe giving 2 or 3 is an option. I want to really respect our teachers here and have everyone know that these are purely examples, and we trust them as professionals to create what's best for their class.
Thank you, Mala. The last question I have is for volunteers, like, you know, usually parents helping in the virtual classrooms, would that be something that's decided at the district level, or is that going to be more site-to-site decisions of how that works?
I can jump in on that. I think we want to start at the district level to set the parameters. And so I know we're looking into a lot of the legality aspect of it, but we do not want to, you know, ignore this fantastic resource of our completely engaged community. So the way I've been kind of thinking about this is that, you know, option 1 is to get our teachers' assignments settled, get the first day of school going, get the students in, and then we will kind of really take a look at how we can best utilize this, I don't know, digital parent like strike force or whatever. Like, yeah, like, so I think we really want to define at the district level what some of those appropriate uses for our fantastic parent volunteers, and then hand that down to the school sites, and then they can kind of see how that would fit. Mr. Arnett.
I mean, there are some things that are not as timely, like I don't know, I believe fingerprinting would still be an issue, yes?
That's what I think we're investigating those components. But even just thinking, like, if we can get parents to, record reading, or there's many ways that we can try to involve them. And so I just think that our primary goal is to get staff assignments settled. So then first day of school, August 19th. So
I get that. I was just wondering if there was something that we can put on, like in preparation for that. If you are interested in being a volunteer, here's some things you can take action on now, like fingerprinting, which has a bit of a cost and takes some time to get processed. But while we're getting our ducks in the row and getting organized, they can take care of some of that preliminary procedures that take a lot of time, so that they can hit the ground running when we're available to.
Perfect. I think that's we can start laying that groundwork as well. So I think that's great.
I'd just like to throw in that I hope that we can figure out a way to involve as much help as we can, because I think having the adults in the room is so important, and even doing Project Cornerstone lessons, FAME lessons, like I think there's definitely ways of doing this, and I don't understand the legalities and the issues around Zoom. I know there's some privacy issues, but if it's not being recorded, I don't know. I don't understand why there would be an issue, but I just want to put a vote in for making it as flexible as we can to involve as many adults in these kids' lives and as much entertainment and learning as we can during this time.
So we will continue to investigate that, just knowing that there is many folks willing to contribute and wanting to help. And then we just want to make sure we're doing it in the appropriate way, and taking step forwards together. So, okay, I think we will maybe be able to put something together and start to communicate that to the school site, so that they can then start to keep that their parent engaged. And I think one other aspect we've had conversations at the cabinet level too is just making sure that the digital volunteer force is equitably distributed across the district as well. So we want to be conscious of that. So
this might be a great way for us to make it more equitable than it's been in the past, right?
Correct.
So that's kind of awesome.
Thank you, Jeremy. All right, board, if there's any other like clarifying questions that you have of staff, let's do that. But then we need to we'll just kind of clarifying questions right now, and then we'll make a motion, and then we can discuss more. So Bridget, do you have one?
I have a question for Tasha for independent studies. So like, let's say like the kids would still be getting the regular workbooks. Like if there's a math workbook with consumables, they would still get that, so that if we did go back to in-person learning or distance learning, they would still have that same curriculum. Is that the thought, where like, I'm thinking more for like the middle grades or upper grades where there's consumable workbooks and things? Would they have the same math curriculum, for example?
So math at the middle school is working on something very online. So Carnegie hasn't been the most popular curriculum, unfortunately. It's good, it's a good resource, but it's definitely not something that we are holding dearly onto. So we have alternatives, and the math team, in fact, has done an amazing job this summer of working on prioritizing standards, getting together, the mastery standards, formative assessments. So it's more online, but we do have the consumables. We've ordered all the materials, and teachers were given the choice of what they wanted to order and what they needed. So that's what's been ordered.
Well, I mean, even for like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade or second grade
level, I can see it more being, definitely used, like I've spoken to. We want to balance the print, paper, pencil tasks along with online, because screen time is just, we don't want 6-7 hours of screen time during the day, and then more for, just entertainment purposes. That becomes just way too much.
Okay, because I was thinking that would help them if we move between phases or things.
Yes.
I have some questions for Rob, but if anyone else wants to talk about other stuff, I have a couple questions for Rob. Ready, Rob?
Finish, Bridget. I just have a quick one, but I can do it after.
Go ahead.
Okay. My quick one is, so we're talking about having the teachers come back into their classrooms to teach, which I think is great. How are we deciding who comes back? Are we just offering that? Are we encouraging that? If a teacher's not comfortable coming back to the class, I'm just trying to get a feel for how many teachers will be in their classroom, do you think?
Yes, so that is one of the primary questions that we're asking in actually all surveys, is that their comfort in certain assignments and then their ideal preference. And I think because we're starting all virtual, we are leaning toward granting whatever their preference is to teach virtual school either from home or from the school site, just making sure that they have the proper supports, because the theory of them teaching from the school site is they have access to their items, proximity to colleagues, and what was that? The stable internet, etc. So I think that's the assignments that we're going to be making early next week and notifying both the staff and the managers. So.
That's great. Thank you.
So my question kind of piggybacks on Reed's in terms of the teachers being at school and the students not being at school, because I think in the packet review questions, I've had some very specific questions. And like, for example, I love how I'm the one who always brings up like this stuff, but I just wanted to check in about the toilet seats, okay? Like, I just, I think there's things like the toilet seats for the staff bathrooms. You mentioned HVAC and ventilation, but at one of the previous meetings, we had talked about how there's a couple rooms on each campus that weren't quite suitable, in terms of like they were old or they just, the HVAC wasn't working properly. And, the disgustingness of drinking fountains in general. So, like, what about addressing some of the physical changes, like before kids get back, and also to make it safer just for the teachers who elect to come back onto campus?
So Bridget, I can kind of give you an overview and then let Rob kind of jump in. So we're really, because Rob and I have talked about this a lot, because there's a lot of things we can do for safety. And so we're really focusing on the county guidance and the CDC guidance, and doing those things which are indicated in the documents that we're getting from them. Unfortunately, toilet seats is not in them. So. Well,
that's the thing, is that, some of the stuff that they're learning, it's learning so quickly. They're learning so much so quickly. Like, for example, the county guidelines are based on the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations, which after they came out in our district, the county did all this work on it. They gave us the guidelines. Everyone was moving forward with that. And then the American Academy of Pediatrics had to walk their recommendations back because they were pushing so hard that like kids must be in the room at all costs. Oh, well, not if you have community spread. So I just feel like if we know that there are some things scientifically, like transmission happens in bathrooms when toilets flush, and that closing the lid is a really good idea, I just don't understand why we wouldn't be proactive and lean in on some of that stuff. Or if, for example, we know that those water refill stations or the water bottle refill stations are very expensive, but this is a time when it might be able to be done, and for a good reason, because they're super disgusting. So I don't know how you pick and choose what that is, but it seems like the toilet seats, for aerial transmission of fecal matter, it's just like, it's like someone's like sneezing in the whole room for several minutes. Even if you have an awesome vent, this is a shared facility. And I just, I know I've talked about throwing up and poop and all this other stuff, and it's really a bummer that this is me now. But like, it's real, and like, if you said, why are people afraid to come back to the site? Like, one reason is, well, I live pretty far away and I can't go home and use my own bathroom. Like, if that's a reason for someone not to want to come to work, that's a problem, And we'd say, well, things are open, but oh, you can go there, sure, but you can't use the bathroom. Like, that's not gonna work for humans. So anyway, I really wish we would just say, like, let's just get a price on that. Like, what is the price for toilet seat covers? And
Bridget, I don't want to be disrespectful at all. I know that there can be fecal matter that flies in the air, but hopefully people are flushing after they go, and like it's not there. And as long as people are using proper
when it
hygiene,
goes there.
Yeah, but that's their own poop. Like if you poop and you flush, that's your own poop. You're getting the air from. I just haven't heard of that as the big proven method of transmission. Like we know that people's breath is. So I feel like we want to spend our time and energy and money on things that we know, we have proof, or we know that are likely causes of transmission. I mean, maybe bathrooms could be, but I just feel like we want to base everything on actual science and actual cases. And I know there can be fumes, but I also think as long as we're cleaning them daily, and I just don't think that's a huge, I mean, I've used lots of public toilets lately, like it hasn't been an issue for me, but that's just me. My risk tolerance might be higher than yours. So I just don't see that as like the hugest.
No, I mean, I was watching, I don't know if it was CNN or MSNBC, and they did this study, and I've heard it several times, the same study referred to. And so I just feel like that would be, there's multiple stalls in a bathroom, right? There's multiple stalls in our teacher staff bathrooms. And I'm sorry for like leaning on this, but I just feel like,
and we'll whatever the direction of the board is, that's the direction we'll go. The approach we're taking is just prioritizing, which is, I think is really at the heart of your question. How are we prioritizing? And we're prioritizing those things that are in the county and the CDC documents. So I think, like Rob, I think has an answer about, certainly about ventilation and the water filling stations, water faucets, and the like, because those are included. But again, if the board wants us to find the price of toilet seats, we're happy to do that.
So
go ahead, Rob, go ahead.
No, please go.
Well, I was just going to say, before we discuss, I mean, if Rob, you want to respond, but I think as a board, we need to have a motion before we give direction to the board and discuss those specifics further.
I can answer a couple of the questions first if you'd like, or you guys can do your motions. It's up to you.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob. That's great.
Okay. So I'll start with the HVAC systems question, because I feel like one of the ones that the health department has been very prescriptive about. And I have never said that at multiple school sites we have systems that don't work off of a outside air draw or recirculating air system. I actually have less than a handful of systems in the district that don't actually work off of an air exchange in the room. There is 2 rooms at Sunnyvale Middle School that use what is, I think a lot of people would like to have in their house, is a radiant heating system. And just 2 rooms at SMS that have radiant heating. And given the fact that we don't have, for the time being, students on campus, we're going to just work with the site administrator to see if those particular folks would like to use a different room for the time being. So pretty, in totality, that's actually a limited issue for us. We do have air that is a combination of recycled and drawn in virtually all of our spaces. If it's in those couple of rooms that actually don't have the system that pumps the air through, they do have exhaust fans in them that we can manage airflow that way. However, I think the easiest solution is just to work with the site administrator for those 2 particular rooms. And when we do get to modernization at SMS, it's a little more of a complex change to revamp the HVAC system. We'll abandon the radiant heating system at that point in time. But anyway, so that's as far as the HVAC piece goes. And the CDC has issued, or I don't know if it's County Health Department or CDC, but one of the 2 agencies has issued recommendations as far as air filtration systems go. And I'm in working with our member of our maintenance team, one of our skilled maintenance workers, whose his primary focus is HVAC. We've been able to install filters that meet or exceed in the balance of the systems. So he and I have been in close communication on that piece. So I feel pretty good about the air filtration piece. the bottle fillers, good question. We've been looking for opportunities for projects to, I don't want to maybe use the word take advantage or capitalize on this time when you don't have as many bodies on campus. You know, we have some projects unrelated to COVID safety that we're working on, but just other safety in general. And actually one of the things that I've been working on with our plumber is the procurement of some hydration stations to kind of round out the school sites that don't have them. So regardless of where COVID was coming into play as far as recommendations go, that's something that we were targeting anyways. So I feel pretty good about where we're moving with the bottle fillers and the HVAC systems.
Thank you, Rob. So board, if there's any other questions related to the packet or clarifying, we can do those, and then we'll have a motion discussion. So I think Jeff.
I have one that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
So Jeff and then Reed.
Go ahead, Reed, that's fine.
This is a little more complicated, but if we have a child that's missed 3 days of distance learning and we need to kind of go and re-engage them, do we have ways in which we can do that? Like, it just seems tough, but have we thought through how we're going to do that? And I'm just kind of curious how that would work.
Holly, you want to start or you want me to start?
I'm fine. I would just say our principals have done such an amazing job in the spring of doing that. So we have a whole repertoire of things that have worked, things that have, they have tried, and we know not the same thing works for different students and different families. So it's really a range of very individualized follow-ups that take place that include, in addition to the classroom teacher, the outreach liaison, the front administrative staff, the principal, the AP, and then goes into Tasha's realm of the social worker, a behavior tech, whoever, depending on what the students' needs are. So there is a toolkit of strategies that have been curated and tried by different schools for sure. Tasha, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and even prior to this, our MTSS team, which kind of included our APs and myself and Ms. Chu, we had been working on revising and improving our whole emphasis on attendance anyway. So we've created a flow chart which we'll vet with our leadership team. And then I think I have training actually next week because the district attorney is actually looking at how we continue our SAR process as we proceed with attendance in virtual learning. So we will continue our practices as we have. They'll look and feel a little bit different, but the supports will be consistent with what they've been. It'll just feel a little bit different.
Right. That's a great question because we are tracking, attendance and engagement. So yes, we need to definitely align the two.
Hi, Michelle, I had one clarifying question. I had heard that there have been contact with all of our on-site child care providers with the exception of California Young World. Has there been outreach to this particular provider since they provide childcare at 2 of our sites?
I have been in contact with them throughout the shelter-in-place period. Just I don't have specific details from them as far as what they're looking at in regard to the surveying of parents yet.
Okay.
But no, they haven't been operating in isolation. They've been keeping us apprised of what's going on. I just didn't have any specifics to share at this point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. But we will round that information up.
So the question I have is regarding the last speaker. I know you addressed that a little bit. She referred to a survey due tomorrow, and I know you were saying that if any interest in independent study to get more clarification should go to that next week to find out more information. But I guess the inference I got from that concern was if the teachers express interest in it without fully understanding what that is, does that survey commit them to that, or is it just sort of an expression of interest?
It's the expression of interest, and we are trying to clarify because we needed that data to even understand the number of teachers interested in that program. And so no, it's not a binding document. It really is the planning piece, so we know the preferred assignments, and we were even asking eventual questions about what would it, what do you need to feel comfortable eventually to come back in person and blended. So it is truly a form and survey with assignment preference, and then we're going to start locking those up. And again, I think I should make that clear to everyone who is listening. It's the fact that yes, it is just the option, and then again, the default, to be honest, is going to be a virtual school assignment. And then we are starting to have conversations in human resources regarding employees who are having even difficulties being able to execute the virtual school from school or home given underlying health conditions or childcare issues. So we are using that as the starting point, not binding, and trying to find the right fit for everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Any other questions, Board of Staff, clarifying questions? Okay, Dr. Gallagher, I'm wondering if before we move to the motion, if you want to, I don't know if you want to read the description or just give a short, I mean, we talked about the whole specific plan, but we're not necessarily approving all the little details of that plan. So if you want to kind of stir some before we do our motion.
Yeah, I'll just read the description, and then people can answer or ask questions about that if they want. So this is actually in the agenda. And this was recommended language from our attorney, Greg Danis, for this, and it's intended to give us flexibility. So the motion is to direct the superintendent to create a full distance learning model of instruction for all district students consistent with the orders and guidance provided by the California Department of Public Health in its COVID-19 and reopening in-person learning framework for K-12 schools in California, 2020-21 school year, and consistent with the orders and guidance provided by Santa Clara County Public Health Department's mandatory directive for schools dated July 17th, 2020, subject to collective bargaining regarding the impact of such decisions. And additionally, the superintendent shall provide for families an option of enrollment in the district's independent study program consistent with existing board policy. So as I said, it's based in those documents. It gives us flexibility within those documents, and those documents outline the conditions under which a district can return to in-person learning. It outlines the process for waivers. And of course, there's the statement, the really important statement about collective bargaining as well.
Thank you. Reed?
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 2021 back to school plan as Mike stated, with the flexibility that we've also discussed.
A second.
Thank you. All right, board, is there any comments or discussion?
Oh, I just wanted to say maybe when, if we're gonna put up samples of, because the sample schedules that Tasha went over are not in the, the presentation on the agenda because they were added later. So I was, maybe if there's a spot, online on the website or whatever for parents to look at sample schedules, maybe both sets could be in there so people could get a feel for how their day would look different if they were independent study versus if they were virtual school. That would just be.
And I see Aaliyah taking notes, so. Good idea.
Follow up with Tasha and Mala on that later.
So I have a comment. I appreciate the feeling and sentiments that were expressed by the Juntos community, that they felt that they were not as engaged in this process and that there wasn't a room for them. What I would like to share with them is the fact that everyone in the county and in the state is struggling with how do you do immersion programs in a virtual world. And I can tell you this, that I've been asking of staff and I've been researching And there aren't as many effective models for which to say, oh, this is exactly what it looks like, and this is the best practice, and this is what's going to work for everybody. So what I want to say is that it is iterative. We have heard you, and that we're trying to build. I was in a meeting, a 2-day meeting, talking about ethnic studies and being able to engage students and families in appropriate ways. And I believe that there's going to be some teaming that's going to happen within the county to talk about building cohorts that can start to share best practices and what this looks like, because we know that as much as we want to get back to school as soon as possible, and that was the mindset that we had been directed towards until it got quickly moved away within the past 2 weeks of looking at additional opportunities to serve this community and serve it well. I realize that there needs to be some more flexibility that we didn't realize in the fact that childcare centers have reduced their hours, and that their initial mission for serving families in off hours and after school has now been stepped up to making programs and needs for which they were not designed or had not thought about, and how their particular guidance about how they're supposed to be operating, they only received within the past week and a half. So it's super dynamic, and we're really, as a whole community, caring about our families, our staff, and most importantly, we're focused in on what is best for the students. So it is iterative. I do want to emphasize that we're looking at additional flexibility to try and see what is going to be the best possible fit that we can do within the constraints that we have right now. It's imagining things outside the box. We're moving into opportunities that we've never had before. So please, I'll reiterate the word that Dr. Dean used, and that word is grace. And understand that we're trying to work with you in this process. And let's give each other that sense of best intentionalities and grace to try and work through this process as gracefully as we possibly can, because we really care about the programs that we built, that we've designed with intentionality to serve your community's needs. And we want to have that be a part of our program moving forward. It goes beyond just this moment in time in COVID.
Thank you, Nancy. Bridget, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just also wanted to say, you know, I wish that there was a way to, you know, maybe once this gets going, Aaliyah will do a really great little promo on like the different kinds of learning we have, you know, going on. Because being able to go, I know Michelle and Reed and Nancy and I were able to go into some classrooms, and Jeff, your job, you're in classrooms, so it's different. But we were able to go and see some of the classrooms that were happening, sessions that were going on in summer school. And it was super interactive, super dynamic. It wasn't all tech heavy. There were kids writing on boards and showing them. There were kids reading aloud. It was very differentiated. People were very engaged. So I think that I'm really excited about the school year and what we're going to learn. I know it's going to be really hard, but you could just see all those kids were really committed. There were families sometimes, I saw some special education classrooms where the families were engaged either on camera or kind of in the background. And it was just awesome. So I think it
Bridget,
is going to be
can I-
great, and it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a good experience ultimately. I have a lot of faith.
Awesome. Yeah, I wanted to jump onto a little bit of what Nancy was talking about has been upsetting me as well. And then Bridget, one of the things about looking at the online, being in the online classrooms that I really appreciated is, you know, there's questions that some of the teachers will ask and each child has a little dot and then they move their dot to their answer, either how they're feeling or the answer to a question. And it becomes this big page of a continuum where you can see every dot and where each child landed. And I couldn't see the name of each child and whose dot was whose, but the teacher could. So this is something that I haven't seen. We don't have electronic whiteboards in our classroom. So I haven't been able to see this in our live classroom. So to me, that was something that is pretty awesome, in which teachers can really see where kids are so quick, you know, right away. So that's just one of the things that I thought was kind of cool and better, can be better about online. Obviously, we want the kids back in school, but there are some bright stars and little nice things that we can do in distance learning. And I think as we go forward, we're going to find more. So thanks for bringing that up. And then about the Juntos, super like upsetting to me, I have to say. Like I was surprised. I listened on Tuesday night also, and when we said like, oh, we can't do independent study for Juntos, I was like, what? And I didn't know either. I think we all just kind of, I think we were all sort of thinking it through at that time. And I really hope we can find a way to make that happen, because a lot of the parents that spoke said they do speak Spanish, so they can do the independent study for their child. And I know we're using Excelis, and I know that that's not in Spanish, so that's upsetting. I don't know if we can look into an alternate program that has other languages, but I personally would love to do whatever we can to explore. And I don't really understand what the legal ramifications are and regulations are either. But I just want to put a vote in outwardly to say, like, if there's any way we can offer that, because if there's parents that cannot have their students online during the time of distance learning, that's a big problem. And we do care about equity in this district, and it is not good if we're putting these families in a position where their kids can't be successful. So if there's anything that we can do to make that happen and to give these parents as much flexibility as we can, even if it's on a one-on-one basis, I hope we can figure that out.
We're going to do all we can, Reed. I can assure you of that. We're going to listen.
I know we will.
Parents' needs are, and we're definitely going to do all we can to make it work. We may not call it independent study, so we don't have the legal ramifications, but we can make it flexible learning, and we will do all we can.
Okay. As long as it works for me. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have appreciated how the last few days that we are seeing that there is that need there and working and figuring out how we can make it work. Board, is there any other comments before we vote?
I just want to say, I mean, I'm lost in the comments and everybody's covered a lot. I like the flexibility approach too. I think it allows our schools to, our school leadership to make some adjustments and adapt to their own school cultures. I have to admit, when I hear immersion program, I hear independent study, I don't usually see necessarily a match to those terms. But I know a lot of the assets our families have in support of that program. But in the spirit of equity, I don't know if all the families who might want to opt into that would have that asset. So I think, not to put a lot of added pressure on our new principal on that site, but even if it is independent study, it'd be nice to have that creativity to still have the independent study partnerships where they can still practice and socialize and learn together, despite the fact that it's independent. But I think this plan moving forward in the spirit of flexibility offers that approach to adapt and innovate.
Thank you, Jeff. Board, any other comments?
Yes, I would echo what Mr. Arnett said, that we are flexible and we can try and meet needs as we discover them. And so part of that is looking at what our surveys from you say staff and for what you say, parents, or what your needs are. It would be wonderful if we could meet everybody's individual needs. I'm not sure if that is realistic, but what we can do is if there's emerging needs that are bubbling up and we're seeing that there's more areas that we have not yet seen, observed, or done a deeper inquiry in, then that's where we need to go and that's where we need to be. And I appreciate that the staff is willing and very, very capable of being that child focused and that family focused. And that's why when we say together we're stronger, we really mean it.
And on that note too, I think we have a good number of new team members that are joining us in a very opportune time. I just want to give them a shout out for their bravery and just reassure them that they have our support and confidence. And we look forward to seeing what we all can do. I know we've kind of really complimented and have expressed a lot of confidence in our team that's established, but I mean, wow, joining a time like this is pretty incredible. So hats off to you and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff, for that reminder and those words. Any other comments, board? I don't need to say a lot. I'll just say ditto to pretty much everything all the other board members said. Appreciate the flexibility and thank you for all the great work. All right. Not a roll call, right? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
We seconded it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Aye.
Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion has passed. We will take a 5-minute recess break. So we'll come back at about 8:52, 8:53 to continue with the rest of the agenda. So just as a reminder, the next item, I can get to it, will be the resolution about grading during emergency school campus. No, I'm skipping one. Wait, that is the next one. Yes, sorry. Okay, so we will take our recess and be back in 5 minutes. Thank you. So we're on item 3B, approval of resolution 21-03 in the matter of grading during emergency school campus closures. Dr. Gallagher.
Thank you. This is a CSBA recommended resolution that we've modified for our particular school district. It really has two halves to it. The first of it is to describe how we should handle assessment and grades and essentially hold students harmless for the period of March through June of the school year that just passed. And then the second part of it describes how we would handle assessment and grading for this school year. And we were able to capture in it much of the work that Mala and her teams have been working on during the past year around assessment. So that is the resolution that we have here, and Mala is certainly available for any additional questions that you might have.
Board, is there a motion? Actually, before that, sorry, is there any public comments on this item? If there's any public comments, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature. All right, don't see any public comments. All right, board, is there a motion?
I'll move that we approve resolution 2103 in the matter of grading during emergency school closures.
I'll second.
Board, is there any questions or comments on this one before we vote?
So just to clarify, this takes us to the 4-point grading system, and it And Jeremy, I think I remember you talking at the last presentation about how, or maybe it was Jonathan Watts, where it's a forced choice, right? So instead of having that middle grade, it's a, okay.
And we will be, Jonathan presented it, in spring, and we definitely will bring it back. There's been so much focus on reopening, so we thought the timing would be just helpful to wait a little bit. But really, kudos to Jonathan Watts and his standard space grading team for all the work they did last year to come up with this.
Board, any other questions or comments? All right, not a roll call. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. All right, we are on to 3C, resolution number 21-02 in matter of signature authority for Sunnyvale School District.
Yes, this is an update to our previous signature authority. It substitutes my name for Dr. Picard, Jeremy's name for my name, and includes Rob Smiley in a number of areas. Just want to call to your attention the fact that Rob is a graduate of the Chief Business Officials Academy and holds that certificate. So he's a able substitute when certainly I'm out of town or Lori's out of town. So we have a high regard for him in those matters. So I feel very confident in him stepping in.
Thank you. Board, is there a motion?
I move approval of resolution 21-02 to change the signature authorities.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to ask for public comment earlier, so we'll do that really quickly. If there's any public comment, please raise your hand. And board, is there any questions or comments about this item?
Welcome aboard, staff. Your new signatory positions.
Yes, and this is a routine thing that we do each year and then as staff changes. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion has passed. We are on to item 3D, approval of the contract with, I think you say Lenovo Incorporated for the purchase of computer equipment and management services for distance learning. And I believe this is Rob.
Yes. All right. Good evening again, board. So under the CARES Act, specifically the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, there is one-time funding which is available to support numerous things involved with distance learning. And one of the items that we've been talking about internally for multiple years and looking to make a robust upgrade to our student technology has been one of those things that we've been discussing, and this opportunity came about to continue to further support distance learning. We've been working with a few vendors and then as well our legal counsel on how to properly procure this many items. So what we're looking at here is a purchase for a total of $426,400, and it's using something similar to what we've discussed before in board meetings, whether it be a piggyback contract for modular buildings or through CMAS, where it's the California Multiple Award System. So these are basically what happens is an agency holds a bid where different vendors or manufacturers will provide pricing for certain items that meet specifications. And then based on how that happens, they're awarded those bids. And included in that bid language is the ability for other public agencies to essentially piggyback onto that pricing proposal. And what that does is that sets the ceiling for pricing. That doesn't set the floor for pricing. So you actually are able to negotiate further down from that pricing level. And in this case, we actually ended up about 15% below where the price was set at, or the dollar amount that was awarded to Lenovo for this. And this is for 1,300 Chromebooks. They're a a flip screen, a flip Chromebook typical to what we have in the classrooms, with the enhancement of having the touch screen option on them as well. And I know for some of our grades, particularly at the younger grades, using the trackpad can be a little bit cumbersome. You know, I've witnessed this with my daughter at home in particular during the distance learning in the spring, and seeing how quickly they can navigate through the touchscreen piece. So really having that added feature does make the device a little more versatile. This includes protective cases for the devices as well. So, you know, all in all, it'll be a really positive benefit for the district to make a broad upgrade to our fleet of student technology. And then we have some plans that we've been working on to equitably distribute them across the school sites. The only challenge here, then, it doesn't change anything as far as what I would recommend for the approval of it. This is consistent across all the manufacturers, is there is relatively significant delays as far as receiving of devices due to just shutdowns in factories and things of that nature. However, it still is imperative that we do proceed with getting in line for devices. So with that said, it's my recommendation that the board approve the purchase of these 1,300 devices using the NASBO contract for $426,400.
Thank you, Rob. Board, is there a motion?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the contract with Lenovo United States, Inc. for the purchase of computer equipment and management services for distance learning.
I'll second.
Board, is there any questions or comments?
Public.
Thank you. Public, is there any comments? Use the raise hand feature now. Thank you, Jeff. All right, I'm not seeing any. Board, is there any questions or comments?
I just had a question on how we were doing with the Chromebooks. So, like, overall, do we feel, well, I guess we won't really know, right, until September, probably, like how many are requested, because so many teachers say, well, I really like the is it Go Guardian that they use in the classroom? They're like, I really like that, but it only works on the district computers. And so
Go Guardian would work on these devices. And you know, last year we issued about 3,200 devices during the distance learning phase in the spring. So it's going to be, you know, tough to tell exactly where we're going to land this year. But you know, we've been starting discussions with the principals upon their return, and I know that some of them have been spending a serious amount of thought during the summer break about the distribution of this as well. So you know, we're doing what we can to prepare for it, and we'll have to, you know, flex our resources as demands either ebb and flow.
Thank you. Board, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Rob. It is great that we can get all of that, but also don't have to have it come out of our general fund.
I would like to also just mention, I would be remiss if I didn't just thank you to Lori for the assistance with helping to calculate what we're going to be receiving through this particular funding source, and at least helping to track down the dollar amount and making sure we have the funds to move forward with something like this.
Great. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Rob. All right, not a roll call, right? No. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion has passed.
Thank you.
We are now on to the consent agenda items. Is there, actually before there's a motion, is there any public who wants to make any comments on any of the consent agenda items? If so, please raise your hand now. All right. Seeing none, board, is there a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda items. as listed.
I'll second.
Board, is there any questions or comments on the consent agenda items? As they through, we can just see that a lot of work is happening and a lot of things are getting done that we normally do each school year, but then also extra things with the different school year. So thank you to everyone who is working very hard. And there was no questions, Board, right?
No.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion has passed. And I think that was the end. So our next meeting will be a regular board meeting on August 12th at 7 p.m. And the link to watch that will be in the agenda when that has been posted.
And that is a Wednesday.
Thank you for making note about that. Yes, it is a Wednesday. Even though it's a regular meeting, it's on a Wednesday, not on a Thursday. Thank you for that reminder. Is there anything else before we adjourn? We're good to adjourn then. I adjourn this meeting at 9:07. Just changed that I was looking.
Thanks, everybody. Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone, and thank you to those who. It's great, right? Usually in our boardroom, there's usually no one there, so it's great to see 50 people. We don't get to see your faces. 50 people still here with us. Thank you for your support of our district. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Aye, thanks.
Night.